All right, so here we have Frost's next poem, Fire and Ice, the shortest of the ones we're studying, and therefore the most, what people would consider, deceptively simple one. But as with all work and poetry, and as particularly with stuff we're doing in Discovery, that is not necessarily the case. Clearly, the poem is about opposites or two ends of a spectrum, fire and ice. Considered opposites, really fire and steam, I suppose, is the opposite. But of that, but really, fire and ice is what we always say. You're either fire, you're either ice. And there's always that great line in Spinal Tap, Derek Smalls, who says, you know, we've got two poets in the band. One's fire and one's ice, and I consider myself to be lukewarm water. That kind of thing is the image that we're going for here. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. Now, when we deal with that first sentence, we're dealing with a pretty conversational tone. Some say the world, and it seems pretty light, doesn't it? Oh, some say this will happen. The world will end in fire or in ice. And that conversational tone is obviously puts us off guard, and it's like we're drawn into that poem very quickly and into the idea and into Frost's concept. But when we look at it, it's really about the idea of where, you know, the world, you know, we look at it in a physical sense. Yes, okay, the world is either going to no longer have the sun and freeze, or the sun's going to expand and burn the earth. But also, of course, the world as we know it, that sort of REM sense, is the human world, the world that we exist in. Our way of being will end in fire or in ice. And the reason why that's the case is because we have, or seem to have, these extremes of emotion and passion. And remember, this thing was written in the early 20s, and so he's coming off of a society that had just endured World War One, the Spanish flu, and quite a transition in a way of thinking. And so Frost, amongst many other writers, saw great passion and great human cold-heartedness. So some say we're going to end burning out passionately. Some say we'll end as that cold, distant, difficult creature that human beings can be. Excuse me. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favour fire. So clearly he's linking desire and fire both in the rhyme sense, in the sense of the rhythm of the poetry, but of course he's talking about passion there. Those who have tasted desire, I hold with those who favour fire. I would prefer to burn. I would prefer to burn with my passions and burn out and live a life that is passionate and full and engaging and human. And we get that from his pastoral works. And this is obviously not a pastoral work. This was one that is distinct to the other poems. And you always have that in a collection, a distinction, something that sits apart, which makes it difficult to bring in to the others. But you can do that with a bit of thought. But if I had to perish twice, and here we have the idea, but if I had to perish twice, another little sort of conversational, rhetorical question kind of thing. If I had to perish twice, he's talking about, you know, if I had to die and then I had to die again in a version of heaven and hell, and we'll get to that in a moment. I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. And of course, he's talking about hate, where ice is what separates people from other people. You're as cold as ice. You're freezing cold. You are a cold-hearted person. All that literature and language that they have around it. There's arguments out there that there was an astronomer who says, look, I inspired this poem, and you can look that up, and that's an interesting thing. But this poem is more often than not related to Dante's Inferno, which is a piece of work from the Renaissance, the very early Renaissance, where Dante is taken on a journey through hell with Virgil, who's, of course, a Roman poet. And so they come across people like Caesar and all sorts of things in hell, or at least Brutus and Cassio, who plotted against Caesar. And when they go through hell, there's 9 circles of hell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Also, the poem works in A, B, C, D. Like this kind of rhythm and rhyme pattern here, and this little end part here, the small short line. His cantos, his poetic verses work in that particular phrasing, in that particular manner. So he's clearly calling into his poetry Dante's voice. Now, what has it to do with the Inferno, with the Divine Comedy? Well, there's 9 circles of hell, and of course it's called Inferno, so the place of fire, and there are boiling pits and pitch and all sorts of things, but when we get to the very, very bottom, the innermost circle, the center of hell, we get to a lake of ice. And the most treacherous and the most deceitful creatures are in this lake of ice. Judas, Lucifer, and Satan himself. Satan is kept embedded in the ice. And the irony is every time Satan beats his wings, he's described in that way, to get out of the ice, it causes cold air to blow and more ice is formed. So it's almost like a Prometheus thing. He keeps on having to burying himself in his own sin and his own mortality. And the reason why he's there is because he was the most treacherous against God when he started a revolution in heaven. So he's a representation of the revolutionary zeal, as is Lucifer. And Lucifer, of course, is known as the god of light, Lucifer, lighting up, lucid, clear thinking. So his placement into ice is quenching his fire. Now there's boiling pits around them, but they're in this lake of ice and they're stuck in there. You've also got Judas Iscariot and anyone else who was treacherous or distant from people who lived a life where they separated themselves, treachery against humanity, treachery against community, treachery against the self, treachery against the family. Any people who existed outside of social boundaries and social constructs, or worked against it in any sort of revolutionary or zealous way, or decided that the individual was greater than the society, they are placed in the ultimate pit of hell, which is a lake of ice. And so that's where we get, I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Interesting that Frost is quite happy to say, I know that you could live passionately, but you also would like to live in a solitary way, in isolation. That is also something to be desired. So either ending is no cause for concern for me. We will end in either way, in fire or ice, not lukewarm water, and we will go into that eternal sense, or that second version of perishing, that second death, either through passionate or through ice. And again, not many techniques. It's not like, there's metaphors, there's similes. It is just something that is there for us to read. And then what do we say? This has something to do with discovery. Well, this is a discovery for the audience. That's also a discovery for Frost's persona. I feel that I'm happy to be either described in either way or either method. And that is really what's happening. It's a very personal, individual poem. There's no one else really speaking. So yes, fire and ice.